Okay. Well, waiting for StreamYard to show me if anybody showed up. I guess I'll chit chat for a little bit. See if I can get about 5 people in here and then start reading the little bit of writing that I did a couple weeks ago. I think I started about 2 or 3 minutes later than 2 o'clock because I forget that I have to open Chrome to get StreamYard to work because it doesn't work on just Google or Bing. I'm gonna see if 2 o'clock works. If 2 o'clock is worse, then I'm gonna go back to 1 o'clock, or between 1 o'clock and 1:30. Someone's got me glowing. There we go. Hopefully that works. Still holding on to my signal. Even if nobody shows up in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to start reading anyways. And then I'll just close my live early and people can just review what I read. I'm starting to think 1 o'clock is probably the better time. At this time of day, even I'm wanting to take a nap. It's Saturday and it's getting warm. I was going to do this in my mom's van because my van is definitely too hot. It's darker interior and it was cloudy, but it's starting to get sunny. Hopefully I get a cloud over me here in a little bit. And this is air conditioned shed. So I'm staying cooler, much cooler than I would be right now if I was outside. Thought about doing this outside, but then I'm like, nope, summertime, too many bugs. Okay, then. It's been about 4 minutes. I must pull up my story. Hopefully this works. I'm supposed to have had another phone, but everybody took their phone with them. So I could read my story and not have to worry. See if I can pull it up. Okay, no one yet. So I'm just going to start reading. I wish I didn't have to move. My second day of work in a new state, working on the terminal ward of a new hospital no one knows much about. Okay, well, time to get to work. Making the rounds through the halls, and they said something about just keep an ear out in case someone kicks the bucket. I guess that sounds easy enough. First hall down, time for the second one. Wait, what was that? I didn't think anyone in any of these rooms could move. At least that's what senior staff and day shift told me. Or there shouldn't be anyone in this room, at least. I need to take a look, just like they told me. Would be weird if one of the patients actually got up off their deathbed. She peeked into the room. Hello, she said. Clear and almost too loud. for the quiet, being 5'3" and only slightly chubby, with light brown hair that could be lighter if she got out more. She was feeling a string of bravery. She stepped into the room, pitch black, but before she could turn her light on, the flashlight, she heard another sound that almost made her drop it in alarm. She thought to herself, I wish we could keep our phones with us. I could have called the front desk already. Thanks, Roy and Becky. Hey, I just started the story. Basically, the girl was complaining about having to have moved to another state and working in the night shift on the terminal ward of a new hospital no one knows anything about. The sun's got me glowing. I'm sitting in the air conditioned shed right now because the van's way too hot. I thought it was going to be cooler today. I was going to use my mom's van, but then my mom had to run some errands. She, let's see, she heard another sound, almost liquid like, a bit squishy sounding. Was that the squelch of a gooey footstep? She paused and held her breath so she could hear. She jumped and fumbled, finally dropping the flashlight as she bumped into what might be the side of a sink in the hospital room that she stood in. Crud. She could kick herself for her clumsiness, she thought. Panic was starting to rise in her. She was sure now there was someone there, and now she had no way to safely fumble for a light of any kind. She started to slide her feet slowly as possible so as not to be seen backing toward the door. Thanks, you too. In the dark, there was a shifting, shuffling sound that almost mimicked her exact shuffle right as she started moving. She stopped, heard a brief snorting sigh. She tried her best to peer through the dark in the dim light trickling through from the curtained window across the room opposite her to where the sound was. Everything seemed to be the same color, dark blue or black. She was beginning to get a chill, though not from the air. A sudden wet plop sealed the chill with the zing of electric hair-raising terror. Then a wet wriggling sound followed by a sudden thump thump. Revulsion rose with the icy fear. A stuttering near whisper escaped her lips. Hello? She bit back a near sob. When no one answered, the room was still deathly silent. Before she could recover enough to think, there was a rushing, rustling like cloth sound, this time coming in her direction, and she jumped back, stumbling partially to the floor, where she could feel the slippery, thick goo under one leg, followed by a putrid smell as whatever it was had come closer. She ran a few scenarios through her mind of the outcome of trying to flee, escaping blind as she was in this room, or fight. With horror, she realized, what if it could see her, but she couldn't see it? And what if she does try to fight only to slip and injure herself so she could no longer escape as an option? What did she have to defend herself with, she thought. Quickly, she yelled at herself inwardly. I know the door's behind me. If I calculate right, behind her should be the door. If she could just throw herself through it. Yes, here goes, before I lose consciousness from this horrid stench. She was frantic, and the smell made her thoughts start to mush together. Up on her feet and half trying to run and stumble, scrabbling for traction, she hears a slap like the step of something wet and lunges for where she remembered the door to be. Why did she decide to take night duty in the terminal ward of a hospital no one knew anything about? And why walk into a strange dark room to check a strange sound? Well, even if it's just you, Roy and Becky, you guys are getting a good story. At least I think it's pretty good. She was chiding herself to try to get her fear-stricken brain to focus on something else so she could move. The breeze of fresh air finally hit her lungs, and her eyes began to adjust to the light. As her eyes cleared, she thinks, I'm fine. I'm finally out of there, and I need to get to the front desk. But her celebration at surviving and for backup is cut short. Right in her path is a vision from a horror movie, wriggling and dripping everywhere. A gush of wriggling mass splatters to the floor with a wet plop as it steps toward her. That's the end of that one. It's like one of those little short excerpts, like they're supposed to do, like those creepy pasta things. But I don't have the patience to try to figure out how to get the creepy pasta to work, and you have to have like a minimum of 500 words. So just randomly in the middle of the night, me and my sister were like talking about ridiculous things that would weird people out, and I started typing the story. I was like, hey, I could read this on my live stream that's coming up. I didn't describe what she saw because it was to be left to the imagination, just what she might see, with just a little bit of talk about how everything's gushing and gooping. And but yeah, if I was eating, that would make me feel a little queasy. It's been just a little under 15 a little under 15 minutes for me. And if you guys are on, if I can't get like 5 people in here in the next 10 minutes, I'll just close the live. And at least I had attempted to have the live, and I gave it 30 minutes. If somebody can go back and read or listen to, Roy is not a gushy and gooey person. Becky loves that stuff. Yeah, I like that stuff as long as there's not like slashing and like blood spraying type stuff like they like to put in movies like Saw. If it looks gross, that's as much as I'm gonna handle. And if it's a good suspense story, I'll watch the nastiness. But when they start like slinging blood, I'm like, no, that's overdone. You don't need all that to scare the crap out of somebody or to make them weirded out. My sister, I don't know if my sister watched Saw, but she likes scary stuff like the supernatural stuff. And in my story, it could possibly be. I mean, whatever it is walking around and obviously falling apart. Gushy, gooey stuff is falling out of them. So that can't be natural. My other story, I need to write it down so that it makes more sense. I'm thinking about writing it down and reading it, or to have a premiere where it's playing in the background and then people can just make comments of it because it's all like ad lib. There's a lot of and I don't know, like repeated over and over again, but the story is pretty interesting. That I will have going the next live or during the premiere before the next live. And then on the actual live, I'll have another part of that story to continue. Roy like Saw. When I start seeing somebody take their foot or arm or anything off, I'm done. I did Hellraiser, but that's because those were demons and they were torturing people. You didn't have and strangely, you didn't have a lot of blood. You just had a really nasty beginning where somebody came from hell and they showed like all the skin and stuff coming back, or the person was coming back to life. That was really gross, and I will never forget that scene, which is why I don't really like Saw. I used to have photographic memory, and that's one scene I'll never forget. From then on, I was like, I'm just going to close my eyes when I know something really nasty is going on, and I don't care about that scene. I just want to know I can hear what the story is doing. Oh, hey. Like, you guys literally started rating probably 3 minutes before I was going to close the live. Howdy. Hey, Kenneth Oaks, Floss, Pug Sunset. Thanks, Angie Hay, for rating. I guess 2:30 is probably the better time. Or like start it up at 2:15, chat a little bit, and then start reading. I did the story reading. It's basically about it's just like a little tiny excerpt from something that could be like creepypasta. And the lady basically moved to a new state, probably small town. I didn't put that in the story. She started working in a new hospital that was newly built, and she's working on the night shift in a terminal ward. So her job is basically just to make her rounds and see if anybody's kicked the bucket. Make sure that no one is already gone. And usually day shift doesn't, they're doing the cleaning. And a lot of times people have a tendency to go at night when day shift is done. At least that's my experience. um, Luckily, I never actually had to deal with the death. I was at somebody's deathbed, but I didn't have to actually deal with the death. They literally died after I left during the early morning when it was time for the family to take over. And I think I was to leave at somewhere around 11 o'clock. So anyways, she's checking the room. She hears a strange sound. It doesn't really sound like somebody asking for help. It doesn't sound like a voice. It just sounds like someone moving around. She sticks her head in to listen. No one answers, but she says hello. So then she goes into the room, was getting ready to turn on her flashlight when she was sure she audibly heard something moving. And whatever is moving didn't sound right because it sounded really wet. Like somebody stepped forward with a gooey foot. Not like water, but like something wet on the floor. She can't see, and at the movement that she hears, she backs away and then hits the side sink that you usually see in some of the hospital rooms. That knocks the flashlight out of her hand. Of course, she had wished that they let her have the phone, because if she had the phone, she would have called instead of and she could have still had used her flashlight and she could have called for somebody at the front desk to come. Well, most situations they don't want you to have your phone being used um, on the when you're on the job, and she's making her rounds. Hey, old car junkie. I kind of wish I had drawings to go with it, but then again, I don't think I really want to draw what I described. Um, and then when she's after hearing the gushy, ooey gooey footstep, and she's already dropped a flashlight, now she hears the rustling of cloth, like it's something moving toward her. So now she, jumps backward like she's trying to go to the door and ends up stumbling on what's wet feeling, like really thick, wet, something that's wet. And then she almost vomits because then she can smell whatever it is coming toward her. At that moment, she's like, okay, it's time to leave. I'm halfway on the floor. My chance to back up without being seen might not work because whatever it is, since it's coming toward me and I haven't really made any sounds since I stepped in the room, whatever it is might be able to see me. But I can't see it. And if I try to fight, I might slip again and whatever just made me stumble. Because she can feel something wet under one leg. She's like kind of down on one knee. So she's going to lunge toward the door to get out of there. And as she does this, she opens the door and she's like, okay, now I need to hurry up and get to the front desk to tell somebody there's something in that room. And, when you come out of the dark and go into the light, you have that period where your eyes have to adjust. You just cannot see, what's in front of you, what's going on. And apparently what was in the room is outside in the hall. And as she's thinking, okay, I'm going to go report this, she finds herself face to face with something that's gushing and oozing everywhere. And as this thing steps toward her, there's a big wet plop and wriggling stuff on the floor. That's all she sees. And that's the end of the story. So all you guys that just came in, I think I read the story the first 15 minutes of the live. It wasn't that big of a story. So you guys can have to go back to replay to listen to it described in detail. I just gave you like an overview. The next time, I told Roy and Becky the next time, have Dyson Crazy Adventures. The next time I have a live, I will have a premiere first like I normally do. And it will be the first beginning of a story I'm working on that I think I'm going to continue for at least a little bit. It's going to be like a short horror story. It's kind of like speeds things up, and then it's going to have an ending that's, a couple of chapters or so. If you put it in book form, it might be like 150 pages. But that story I'm working on is called Sunlight Allergy. And I have it recorded. Okay, I'll tell Mom that you said hi. She's out shopping right now. It's supposed to be in her van doing the reading instead of being in the shed. To stay cool, because I was going to do this outside, but then the sun came out and it's a little warmer than I can handle. My van is too dark on the inside and I don't have a way to cool it down. Somebody messed with the wiring, so it's not like I could turn the air conditioner for the van on. I have to actually put some way to cool down in there, and without income, everything for the van is slow. Some of you who have looked through my videos have seen what it looks like. I'm facing it right now. If it wasn't so hot, I'd be in that van, because I'd rather be in the van right now than be here. But the other story is about 17 minutes long. So if I did a premiere, that'd be like 17 minutes worth of letting people get in. They're going to miss the first part of the story, but then they would hear the next part of the story, which I would have already typed out, so they could hear how things continue. And basically, an overview of that beginning of that story is that from the mom's point of view first, hey Ray, and the mom's telling you what happened on the way home after she delivered her baby, and what happened, and kind of an overview of what happened till she's about 7. And then the little girl tells you what she remembers from there till she's about 16. And she's like, flashback from 16 to 7. I was going to have it till she was 12, but where I've recorded things, I kind of have a gap between 7 and 12. So instead of going where she comes in at 12, I'll just have her come in at 7. She tells you about the most prominent thing that she remembers. Hey, Timmy Ray. And what she remembers happening when she first realized something was not normal about herself. And her first experience with the only friend that she remembered from childhood. And kind of how her mom handled things before she stopped telling her mom what was going on. Wow, you're just getting up too? You must have stayed up really late. Of course, I probably should have slept a little bit longer. I got up at 6:56. I woke up in the middle of the night at 12:50 something, and I guess I remember getting on my phone to play a game, and when I looked at the time, it was like 2:40. And that's all I can remember. And then I was getting up at 6 something. With the change in time, my body is getting me up way earlier than I have ever liked to get up. I used to get up at 9 regularly, but now I'm getting up at 7. No idea. Okay, you didn't go to bed till 3 a.m. You're one of those people who get to sleep for 12 hours. I have never been able to sleep 12 hours unless I'm sick. And they said it's a healthier time between 8 and 12 is a healthier time. Most adults don't sleep till 12, but most of the guys I know that are adults sleep till 12. Us women, I guess, once we get to a certain age, we start malfunctioning in our sleep. So in our teens, we start to lose our abilities to stay asleep. And when we're adults, yeah, we're lucky if we get 8 hours. And then once you have children, I've heard that from a lot of people. Once you have children, yeah, you're not going to get 8 hours. So now your mind is always on alert. So I'm going to continue with that story in the next live. And in that live, after the premiere, I'm going to pick up reading a little bit more about what happens from the time that girl is 16 years old and she's facing like pre-college courses, and she's deciding what job would be best for her. And she's going to go for either tech, like the ones that clean the equipment and utensils after surgery or after procedures, or she's going to be the RN. And most likely she's going to go for tech. I think I'm going to have her go for tech because that's the only time that no one's really watching what you do. When you're cleaning your stuff, you just have, you're disinfecting. You're usually not in places where there's cameras. Oh, somebody was playing loud music. I hate it when people do that in the middle of the night. In some places that I stayed when I was boondocking a couple of years ago before I knew about our community, There were places that I stayed that you were not allowed to be loud or make noise after 10. And those were like some of the best places to stay because you knew you were going to get your sleep. And they couldn't get noisy again before 7, I think. It had to be quiet from 10 to 7 or she'd get kicked out of the park. And it's like, it was like a, kind of like a campground. Not really an RV park, but kind of like a campground. And it was, I think it was $10. I think we paid $10 for no electricity, or was it $20 for electricity? I can't remember. We stayed there 2 different times. I know the first time was $10, and we had a tent. And the second time we were in an RV. My brother has an RV now. So I'm gonna have a challenge to try to figure out how to ease the story from when she's 16 going into the college level. I'll have to do some research because I have no idea about that level of college. I think my mom recorded part of that thing at KT's when we did the karaoke, but I didn't get that footage from her phone, and I forgot about it. When I get some Wi-Fi access and mom's around, I'll probably see if I can get that transferred to where I can post it. And I don't know if she got that part with the broom, but she got some singing, some good voices. I don't know if she got me. I don't know, when mom just like pops out of nowhere and she has a phone and she's like filming people, and people just realize that there's a phone pointing at them. She's kind of small. She's like 5'2", and she doesn't really stand out. And then when you're in the middle of a bonfire and it's dark, she's standing behind most everybody, and she's kind of standing behind me, and I'm really tall and really, I really stand out. And so they would be looking at me, and all of a sudden there's a camera. I don't want to get into too much detail on that other story because there's places where if it gets too realistic, people who actually do those jobs are going to be like, that's not how it works. So I have to think of how long I want her to attend college, so to speak. Oh my goodness. That's horrible when there's corruption like that. And I see that a lot in the South. Arkansas is definitely part of that system. I'm up closer to Missouri. I've pretty much lived around the main highway 167. Quite a few towns along 167. Hey, Victoria. And my experience was actually the closer I got to Little Rock, the capital of Arkansas, the better the life was, because once you get to a certain point where it's a big city, they don't care who you are. If the cop sees you breaking the law, they're just going to deal with you. In most cases, out here in the small village towns and cities, the cops, everybody knows everybody, and then you have more tendency that the cops are not going to do their job unless you particularly know someone that knows someone. So yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you, Timmy. Yep, 167 was pretty much the route I took from where I am all the way down into Louisiana when I went to KT's Slow Momentum's meetup. And it was only 4 hours from here, so it would have been just 4 hours to get there, but mom had her time off, and she was making sure she got the most out of her time. We said hi to my sister, which usually entails another couple of hours of saying hi before you take off again. And she had an appointment that day, so we made it a full round of everything, and then we kind of took a nap on the way back because we didn't. I think she had to get to work the day after, and she needed to rest before work. So we just went down there and took off again after he had said, "Hey, hang out at the karaoke and had dinner with everybody and filmed some people eating." So then the story that I'm working on after I'll probably start reading from the story that you guys have I posted already called Bubbles. And it's called Bubbles because when this creature has water, that's not really a creature. It's more like creatures. How would I put this? Microbes. When they have in the expert that I posted, it talks about they say they and we, and it talks about the fact that they are on the same level as viruses, bacteria. They're small, but they consider themselves like probiotics, except for they have an intelligence. So that's going to be an interesting story. I'm working more on that. Some of my story, I don't know where the pieces are because I had some of it on my computer, but I don't have access to my computer because all the things that went with my computer when I moved back to Arkansas are just like stored in every which way somewhere in the shed. I tried to get it out so I can work more on it, but I remember mostly what happened in the story, so I might just rewrite that part and then begin the story from what I remember and just add some new details to it because I just had like some scenes put together. I didn't have the story written down and synchronized and sequence so that it was actual, so many chapters at a time. It was just like one scene and then another scene. I was going to start putting scenes together. So 2 scenes are missing. Hopefully I can get one of the scenes because it was the largest part of what happened, the biggest part that happened. Hey, Ray, the biggest thing in the story, like the most prominent part where things become most interesting, and it has to do with a little girl coming in contact with the creature called Bubbles, which of course is probably why it's named Bubbles because a kid named it. And in the video, I said something about it was inspired by childhood nightmares, and I remember when I was about 5, 6, or 7, somewhere in there, I would have, for whatever reason, I would have dreams that if in my dreams something that looked like bath bubbles, and if they touched you, you'd get sick. And if they tried to get into you, and if they made it, then you would get deathly ill. And in the dreams, it was always where there was water. And strangely enough, that I found out years later that that area actually had something in the soil that was underneath the area where I lived from an old junkyard, a dumpster. There was actual chemicals in the soil, and people had started getting sick for real. So I was like, hey, I kind of have an idea. I'm going to take that nightmare and make it into a story. But instead of making it something harmful like in the story, I'm going to make it something that's supposed to be helpful. And it's only harmful if the person who ingests it is one of those people who are really cruel. I think I did go through Ruston, Louisiana from the highway. I remember I-20 to get to KT's. And then I know we came down, once we hit Louisiana, we came down through, how you say that? Bastrap? I don't know how you say that. And in that story that I already posted somewhere in one of my, I think I put it in poems, songs, stories, and so on, or something like that. I have that posted in there. It's just a dark screen with me talking in the background because the idea to record it came at night. So that way I could later write out what is in the story and then fix it. Fast stroke. Okay. Sounds like my mom's back from going grocery shopping. I've been on for 43 minutes. Oh, mom's coming in. Hello. I'm doing a live stream. Yes. Somebody's at least 5 people. Timmy Ray, Roy and Becky that was at the KT Slow Momentum meetup. Red, Victoria, the one that I was doing the Wednesday night karaoke's with. Rave, Van Life Rocks. You hear me talk about him every now and then. And Red's the other person who used his poems and stuff. I didn't know it until I got to finally be at one of her live streams live. So when are we supposed to eat that? I saw dessert. You didn't see it. So I've got about Boxman D showed up. So I've got about 15 more minutes. And I might, since the next live I already got planned, I don't know I think I'm going to do the premiere separate, like the weekend before the actual live. I posted, but I don't think I have it public so that you guys can listen to it. So I think I'm gonna make that a premiere instead of making it a posted video, and that way you guys can give me input about the story. I read one today, but I read it 15 minutes into the live. Thanks for stopping by, D. And so 15 minutes before, 10 minutes before everybody arrived, the story was complete. So you guys can go back and listen to that. And then I kind of recapped it a little bit to tell people what was in part of it. They want the gooey details, they're going to have to read it. Or Roy and Becky got the whole story because they were here like literally a minute before as I started into my reading of that story. And that's the one, that one's kind of like a story by itself, like a short excerpt. And the next live feed is going to be kind of like a story that has a continuation for a couple of chapters. It's going to be like a short story, more of a thriller level. And not really scary, like, oh my goodness, supernatural, but kind of like on a sci-fi level, more of a thriller. Bernice, Louisiana. Farmville, Louisiana, and Spearsville. I remember Spearsville. I don't know if I did Farmville. I remember Johnson City. And I know but we were trying to go like as straight as we could, straight down, so that we could save as much time as possible when we went to that meetup. You guys fixing dinner? I mean, lunch? And so I'm kind of more excited for the one that's about Bubbles, even though it's a child-made name. It's not a child story. Children should not be listening to it. That would make them too scared to go and take a bath. And that live stream won't be the one in, say, we got September coming up. It won't be in September. That one's going to be in October. I guess it kind of works. It's going to be October. Perfect time. Sort of October-y stuff. Um, and that one's gonna have a full hour worth of next year's meetup. Yeah, I can't wait for next year's meetup too. It's gonna be a full hour of reading in October because I have the rest of this month and all of next month to work on the scenes that I already have and try to put them together into the storyline. And that one is kind of I guess it's going to end up being mostly an audio book because I want to get into the story. I'm actually excited to be creating the story. That's my brother in the background. He brought some groceries. And he said he's got Cave City melon if anybody wants any. Yeah, I know you got your Timmy, I know you're KT and BJ's cousin. And you get to hang out with them a lot. Whoa, I didn't realize that. That's the water. That's half of the watermelon. Look how big around it is. We covered it up so it wouldn't get dried out. I took half of it, and it's still big. It's as big as a watermelon, and that's half of it. That one, somebody they charged how much was that? 11, 14 bucks. That's the biggest one. Almost 12 bucks. That's like half of it's the size of a melon. That melon was like 2 melons put together. And it's been a week. It's been a week. It's been a week and a half since we got that. It's taken a lot of 3 people eating this watermelon. I want some. I've only got 5 more minutes. I'm only kin to BJ. Okay, because that's your favorite cousin. Well, BJ's pretty awesome. I can see why. Box Fendi. I'm a kid. I don't like scary stuff, but I'll play it so you can get a view. The story I went over today was probably about 10, 13 minutes long, and it was just suspenseful enough to get your interest, and then it was over with. The other one it would be scary for kids because they would make it in their mind it would be real. And our mind would be like, hey, this is cool sci-fi because nobody came up with, or if they have this idea, it's in a different form. If they have this idea, usually the creature or entity or species that we come across in our sci-fi ends up being a bad guy. In this situation, it's trying to get rid of the strain that was created by the person who made them, or not made them, but dug them out of the ground. And they are already kin to Earth. They've been on Earth since the dinosaurs. That's going to be in the October live stream reading. And we're going to start of when they're coming in contact with the dinosaurs and what they see from the eyes of the dinosaur. It's going to be a brontosaurus. They, whatever has to eat close to the dirt, that's how you get parasites. Or that's how you get into, microbes is from the dirt. It's not going to be like an Elm Street type scary thing, or Jason's or Freddy. I would say, let's see, if anybody knows the old story, The Stuff, it's more on that level. It's not like, it's not really scary, but it's really weird. I'm like, I don't watch any scary stuff at all. Yep. That's I guess it's kind of why I made this story where it's more sci-fi like than it is scary. There's no supernatural stuff in it. The bad guy is actually a person who is greedy. simple, greedy person, but they have the creature that it dug. It's not really a creature, but it's a bunch of creatures. Like they're like microbes. You can't really see them unless you have a scope or there's a bunch of them in one area. And when you see them, you know it's them because it's just an area where it's wet and it's bubbling, and it looks just like bath bubbles on the ground or wherever they are. And that's the guy got the idea to make it into a bath substance, which helps improve the skin. I'm just giving you that as kind of like a overview. And in some cases, that's good. In his case, it was good for him, but not so good for everybody else. But then a little girl comes in contact with it, and the part of her, the part that gets into her is the part that is more benevolent, and it already knows. They already knew who dug it up because they had to come from the same batch that he made of the skin improvement, and they have their own way of communicating. I have to think it through because I know some of it has to do with chemicals and some of it has to do with the host smelling it on another host. In this case, though, the part that gets into a little girl is like more like probiotics and improves her ability to function because she was a special needs little girl. And she doesn't really stop being special needs, but it stops being hard for her to communicate. So she begins to be able to communicate, and so her dad knows that something's unusual because the little girl's already 5 years old. She's had enough time for them to know what's normal for her, and he's more wanting to find out why it affected her mother, his wife, like it did, and it didn't affect the little girl that way. But there's a whole, a whole world where they have to like any movie or story, they have to not just find the entity, they have to deal with it. And there's two scientists that are going to be facing off because one was originally hired by the guy. The guy didn't like the person who found it. Then he didn't like his standards and how he liked to do stuff and what he plans to do with what he found. And he didn't go through the proper levels of clearance to sell his product. So it's just kind of like a black market thing. But, it got on the shelves because he knew somebody that knew somebody. So that's the part of that's how that story is. And the person who really worked for him is the one who starts working with the dad of the little girl who happened to have gone to the same college. And that the little girl's dad tells his friend about what he noticed. And he noticed it had to do with the beauty product that the man who found the substance had endorsed. So the two of them get together to figure out why the first effect was the way it was, how to eliminate that from being a bad situation. And they come across a situation where the substance he found actually wants to communicate. And that was what I actually had recorded, was where it was communicating and explaining how it functioned, and that it really wasn't anything like a virus or bacteria. It functioned more like the probiotics in yogurt. They improve your system if you get enough probiotics and enough yogurt or enough probiotics from what you eat. Then your immune system is improved. So it kind of works like that, except for it has more of a effect in the chemical way, where it can help improve the functions of the brain, not just the stomach. So that's just a little tiny bit of that story. I'm not going to tell you any more, else it's not going to be as suspenseful whenever you guys get to the best part of the story. What is? Oh, you're talking about the horror movie still? Bad negative energy. That's probably why I decided not to. I don't really like bad movies. Like I like sci-fi movies. Like sometimes they can, what you think is starts off bad can end up being a good thing. That's my bowl, and I got a mini here. That's like a bunch of stuff. So Red and D, that part of the story is already been posted, and the name of it is Bubbles. I think story work in progress or something like that. It's in my my playlist underneath poems and stories and songs. So then you can decide if it's something you really want to listen to in October, but it's not like supernatural. Um, there's more good that comes out of the contact with this substance than ends up being bad. But like everything, when people come in contact with something they don't know, there's always a negative reaction first. Take care, Box Fan D. Love you too. It's 3 o'clock. So that's just something for you to check out. It's that part of the story where it's communicating with people is already in my playlist. So I'm going to cut out. Thank you, Timmy and Dee and Red and Floss, Hug Sunset, Roy and Becky for coming to our live stream. Ray, Kenneth Oaks, and Victoria. The first part of this stream had a story in it. That one probably Red and D would not like, but it's one little section that it's not really a type of story. It's so short, it's not really the type of story I'll be writing. The rest of my stories are more interesting, but not on the negative way. Thank you, Dyson's Crazy Adventure, for coming. I think that's everybody. Hope you all have a good weekend.